Hey, what's up everyone? Back with another Bitcoin update. I know you guys love these videos, so I would highly appreciate it if everyone gave these videos a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because it really does help me pump out these videos as much as I can. And if interest is shown, then I know that I can work upon what everyone wants. So today we're going to be narrowing down the scenarios for this current brutal range that is really not moving since our last analysis a few days ago. What can the Elliott Wave Theory tell us now at the current time of recording? Let's find out. In my opinion, I still think that we are looking for more upside. Now, this is just me, and I have narrowed it down to pretty much 4 scenarios, and I'm going to explain them all, where all of them are still leading us to eventually higher levels. Whether this range is going to be ranging even more, or do we have one more low to go before and this leading diagonal that we've been talking about for quite some time get invalidated? We don't know. I could be completely wrong and we just break the lows, but that's not the point. We're working with the Elliott Wave Theory, which can provide us the optimal entries as best as it can. It's a balance of probabilities, not certainties. So what I try to do best is to provide you guys and girls the conviction as best as I can, opposed to many others who may just provide 15,000 different scenarios and then just choosing the right one. But again, the overall narrative is still bullish until proven otherwise, since we do have a protected bottom at the time of recording. So with that being said, our first idea is going back to the idea of that leading diagonal that I've been talking about. I'm still not sure if anyone is seeing this idea, but it is still on my radar and still one of my top priorities in terms of the actual counting, since it is so corrective. And since we are looking for a wave 1 after this bottom that we had here, the only mode of pattern that we can be creating for an impulsive wave 1 or some kind of motive wave is either a leading diagonal because it moved correctly off the lows, or we have to find an impulse move off the lows where this is the wave 1, which we also have as an option. But for now, since the move off of the lows does look more corrective, this idea just seems to be better fitted until this idea actually invalidates. So this idea is a leading diagonal. We have a low of a ABC off of the lows going into that first subwave 1. We have a WXY respectively for that subwave 2, where we have equality between waves W and Y. And then we're looking for another move to the upside. And I'll go over the shorter time frames on how we can possibly create this subwave 3. And then we'll eventually create the rest of these subwaves respectively for waves 4 and 5 to eventually create this wave 1. And then we'll be looking for a larger pullback on the micro time frames for that primary wave 2 before we actually move to the upside. So this is the scenario number 1 that I've been talking about for quite some time. Again, there's a total of 4 scenarios. This is one of them, and I do believe that this is also giving us some signals that we're going to be looking for further upside for the time being. Now, the other variation is that, again, like I said, we could have 5 waves off of these lows here. I did take the time to count this on the micro time frames since our last video. And again, this is either leading us into the first wave 1, and then this 2 is now entirely complete, where we're not looking for a diagonal. Instead, everything is now terminated and complete, that we're looking for a higher degree to be completed for this wave 2, and we're looking for this intermediate wave 3 to the upside at the current time of recording. Now, how is that going to be created? We could be working in that first diagonal again on a minuscule kind of time frame, where we may be working into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where this is just going to be ranging for the rest of the week or into the weekend, and then we create the first wave 1 and then get another pullback before we work impulsively to the upside for a wave 3 of the smallest degree. So this here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will complete that intermediate wave 3, where this wave 1, 2 has now completed, and then we'll be looking for 4, 5 respectively as well. So that's one idea. That's the second scenario out of the 4 scenarios. And then we have a possible pullback scenario. Now, again, if we're completing this wave 1 to the upside, and we're not seeing it as a corrective move to the upside where, this idea is working in a leading diagonal, this idea could now kind of come to fruition as a possible larger ABC. Now, this is really getting close to invalidation, as the B wave is quite deep in itself. We could have this range right here instead of as a WXY. Well, I guess you could have a WXY if you're looking at it flat, possibly, if you're seeing this as a range. But as a deep B wave, we could have this as a motive wave going into wave A for this action area wave. This is looking like a possible leading expanding diagonal going into wave A. Same idea, where we have a WXY going into wave B, and then we're looking for a 5-way move to the downside to complete this wave C. That'll bring us as a ABC to the downside, but also bring us to the possible Fibonacci, or golden Fibonacci rather, levels of at least a 618 or the 78.6% level. And that also is going to be another interesting level of support going forward. And that could be just part of a larger degree that's now going to be a 1-2. Instead of having this 1-2 being exhausted here, we can now put this idea over here as the wave 2. Again, that's scenario 3 out of the 4 scenarios. Now, this idea is still a little bit lower in probability as we haven't broken any immediate lows, especially with this wave A over here. We've been kind of creeping up for the time being. It still seems like it wants to break this previous high, but we'll have to kind of monitor it. This weekend, I don't know if this volatility is going to be coming in, but I'm expecting some kind of breakout or at least a breakdown very, very soon. So we'll have to see if this idea is going to be monitored or not. So it's a third scenario. And then our final scenario, so this is the idea where we have a possible flat idea of some sort where we have this as the AB and then the C wave can be kind of followed differently in terms of how you want to construct this ending diagonal going into that wave C, which will complete this larger B wave, hopefully as an expanded flat, because that'll give us a little bit more confident that this could be a fake out, and then we'll do another fake out for that wave C where we break the termination of wave A and we come back into the similar zone of that 1-2 pullback. So this is kind of a hybrid zone of where that pullback is going to be happening. And then we can also be met again at that 61.8% level, at the major golden Fibonacci level, or that 78.6 level, and then we'll continue up for that primary wave 3. So these are the 4 different scenarios on how we can be looking at Bitcoin, all in order of probability. Again, with the current data given, I'm still seeing this move as a corrective move to the upside. And then if we, pull back later, if we get all of the necessary subwaves as the 5-wave subwave move into that primary wave 1 as a leading contracting variation, then we can look for that pullback and then look for more upside. So this is kind of the balance approach, meaning that this is going to be satisfying the shorter term bulls and bears, and then eventually we'll see that peak build up of institutions and retail investors alike to build up more positions at lower levels that they may be interested in. So that's kind of a balance of probabilities. And then we're going to be looking for this idea, which is the more bullish scenario. To be honest, I really want to say this is my primary idea, because it would just straight shoot up and it really wouldn't have any significant pullbacks with this scenario. We won't even come down into the major Fibonacci levels. We're just working for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now. So I would love to have this as the first idea, but again, it's a little bit too ambitious. So that's why it's now deemed as an alternative. If it does in fact move up, you guys know that I'm one of the first people who's actually calling for a possible 1-2 idea that's now complete. So we're going to be looking for this extension wave 3 to happen. If this high breaks here, we'll get more confident if we break this previous high over here, where we retrace this whole move to the upside. So that's something to look out for. That's scenario number 2. And then again, scenario number 3, this is that pullback we're looking for. Now let's go into the shorter time frames now and discuss how this diagonal could be actually constructed, because I did take some time. It's extremely tricky right now, ladies and gentlemen, this diagonal. Now, this move here, this ABC off of the lows, no problem there. This WXY, no problem there. I'm not sure why people are seeing this as a possible ABC. This is a 3-way move, obviously. You can have this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it is fitted way better as an ABC. So that's leading us into wave W. So that helps us lower down or narrow down the scenarios a little bit more. This wave X is now completed. ABC similar, and also we have equality between waves W and X. So I would say this is probably the highest scenario, best as built as a WXY. So real no subjectivity behind that. Now this part is extremely difficult. We can have a possible leading down going to wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that completes off our first wave A, and then we have a new price extreme for this wave B just by a hair. We can have this as the ABC. We have a 5-wave move going into that wave C. So this will be the ABC. That'll be the first partner leg of this wave W. And it seems like this is now creating a range. So the only way I can create this as a possible range is a triangle, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the best looking triangle, but really there's no alternative to this idea. If this is a transitional wave, we're now looking for a resolution phase where we're looking for the final ABC to the upside, and that'll be the WXY, where we'll complete that subwave 3 that we were looking for on that macro time frame or the medium time frame. So this is how I'm currently seeing it. I mean, we're pretty close to invalidation anyway for this wave X. So if we breach this low, we may be working in a different structure. We'll have to see. But again, with the current time of recording, if you guys again want to see more updates throughout the weekend, give a thumbs up, ladies and gentlemen, give a thumbs up. But for now, again, we're looking for an ABC for this partner like here, similar. And again, we're looking for equality, right? I've been always saying that we're always looking for equality between the waves. This would be kind of like the first level of interest where we can see a possible rejection to create that second trend line to the upside for that subwave 3, and then look for another move to the downside. The next tendency would be the wave 4 going into the territory of wave 1, and then we'll look for a pullback to the upside for that wave 5, eventually creating that larger ABC to the downside for the primary wave 1, 2 of the higher degree. So that's how I'm currently seeing the diagonal. And I mean, we can count this as several ways, really. We can go into an ABC, extend as much as we want, but again, there's really no point in talking about that. Now, the other idea that I mentioned, remember the idea where I said that we may be finished with the wave 1, 2? This is how we would count that, where we're working for the extension to the upside for a wave 3. So this is where things get interesting because it kind of separates and it does a better job on the micro time frames in terms of separation. So we can count 5 waves into this wave 1. And again, we can just say that this wave 2 has just similarly ended entirely where we don't create that diagonal. So we have a WXY completed for a primary wave 2 of the micro time frames. Again, same idea here. We could have this as an ABC, which would be completed as the first subwave 1 of a smaller leading diagonal now. Now, this is getting interesting because even though it's correctively moving here, that would be pretty much the only way we can create this as a possible move going into that first wave 1 of the intermediate degree. So we would have this as an ABC going into a wave 1, and then we would have a 2, 3, 4, 5. Either way, it doesn't really matter. We can also count this as a possible AB, and then this C wave is diagonal entirely in itself, so that's valid as well. And then we're looking for a 1, 2 pullback. Eventually, that will be the last kind of phase before this protected low becomes in play, and then we're looking for a 3, 4, 5, eventually breaking out of these regions where we don't look back in this region anymore, and then we do this kind of move to the upside for a 3, 4, 5 into that primary wave 3. So that will give us a relatively good look and in symmetry wise. So that's how I'm seeing the 1, 2, 1, 2 scenario if this 1, 2 is completed. And then we're looking for a deeper 1, 2 if this idea comes to fruition based on this possible high here. Now, again, remember, I've said that this is all based on the probabilities of what is given to us at this current time of recording. Anything could change. 1 second after this upload, we could already been pumping or dumping. So let's just see how this is working out for this possible deeper 1, 2. The only way I can see a possible deeper 1, 2 and create a partner like for this is that we are looking for a leading expanding diagonal going into wave A. Again, this is all corrective here. So this would give us the separation. This would give us a second separation. And then this would be the third separation, meaning that we're looking for this partner leg against this partner leg here. And this zone here is now complete. So this invalidation is already really close here, ladies and gentlemen. So a break above this would be a possible invalidation of just having a deeper B wave. But it's okay. There is that other idea. Now, the fourth idea that I was mentioning, since we're looking for a possible also flat to the upside, is that you can't have this as a leading expanding diagonal now. We would have to resort back to that WXY idea where we have this as WXY. And then, similarly, we can have this as a possible WXY going up as well, or we can just work with that diagonal idea that I was talking about where we could be doing this and have that as the ending diagonal rather, where we have an ABC going into the B wave. So this would be similarly constructed, and then we would have this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going up into that possible B wave, completing, and then we would have that pullback similarly for that wave 2, and we just do a quicker pullback rather than having that 1, 2 pullback at a later stage. So it's all about the timing here, ladies and gentlemen. It all leads us to eventual higher levels. That is the key point here, right? So if we're looking for higher levels, we're just really not trying to focus too much on the shorter time frames. So that's why I have this as the main key point of this video, which is a total of 4 scenarios that all lead us to eventual new highs. And as long as the protected low is in, we're gonna be looking for higher levels. That is just how we have to play with the probabilities. Now, we can be working in, again, that bearish idea where this is, working in a possible move to the downside. We really don't know if that's going to be working into the current scenario right now until this low is actually broken. So really, based on my conviction, just working with a bullish idea or thesis is just better. We can't satisfy both sides. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I was the biggest bear at these levels over here. I was the biggest bear over here, and I eventually turned a bull when I started to reach these levels here, because we could be seeing a possible wave 3, 4, and this move down here. Alternatively, this is pretty much the last final straw that where I'm going to be a bull, and anything lower, I'm not going to see a possible wave 4 ending here. That would just be way too long in time against our wave 1, 2 of the larger degree. So hopefully that was helpful, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you guys are interested in joining the XForceGlobal Discord membership, I do all of my timely updates in there. If you guys are interested in the Patreon membership, all the links are in the description below. It's just a lower paywall to get into the actual more exclusive content. And then if you're not following me on social media on X or Twitter, please do give me a follow there at XForceGlobal. Thank you very much. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Give this video a like. If we hit 100 likes, I'll probably do another update during the weekend. So show your interest, all right? Thank you very much. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.